I'd like to firstly welcome all of our official guests here. We've got the Premier, Mr. Dominic Perrottet, here once again in our region. He was at Forbes only a few weeks ago and a few weeks before that. And I'd like to thank, on behalf of our local community, Premier, you making the time and effort to come out here and spend some time now and listen to the concerns of our local community here. We also have Senator Sheldon, Emergency Services Minister Steph Cook, Scott Barrett, MLC from the Upper House, Jamie Jones, Deputy Mayor. We've got Sam Farraway, Minister for Regional Roads and Transport, Kev Beattie, the Mayor of Cabonne, and Carleen York, the Commissioner for the State Emergency Services. I hope I haven't forgotten anyone. Look, it's unfortunately we're in circumstances like we are with this unprecedented flood that's come through this town on early hours of Monday morning. Tragically, we've seen the loss of life of a woman, a female, a local lady who unfortunately was found and deceased. We still have 2 people, as I understand it, unaccounted for, and our thoughts and prayers go out for those people and their families, especially those of that lady who passed away, and my sincere condolences to her family. Look, what we saw happen on Monday morning has been described by many locals as basically something they've never seen in their lifetime. A tsunami hit this town, and you only need to see as you drive up through the town the extent of the damage that we've seen here. Unprecedented levels of damage that this town has ever seen. Houses being dislodged and moved off their foundations, cars being overturned, tanks and debris and machinery, everything that was in the flow of this tsunami that hit this town has just been ravaged and left all over the place. An absolute, very disaster zone. I can't describe it any other way than that. Look, the local community has banded together, all the SES, the RFS, the local police, the emergency services, but a special shout out to the local community who have done an amazing job in extremely difficult circumstances. We've all heard, every one of us here behind me have heard from local members of the community as to the events that have happened that unfolded the early hours of Monday morning. And it's things that you would read about in a book, where it's a fight or flight sort of situation, people just relying on their natural instincts of survival, of helping one another. We've heard acts of heroic acts by just people in the community. Unbelievable efforts that they've made, and you know, we can thank such a close-knit, tight community for the fantastic work they've done. All the volunteers who have donated items in that equipment shed over there, banding together, has been a phenomenal community effort. But I'd like to now pass on to the Premier, Dominic Perrottet. Once again, thank you for joining our town. It's unfortunate it's in these circumstances, but it shows true leadership that you've taken the time to come and visit us once again. Like I said, 3rd time in about a month to our region. We sincerely thank you for that, and I'll pass on to the Premier to address you all. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Well, can I start, obviously, like Phil has, and just passing on my condolences to the family of the woman who lost her life tragically in these floods, and obviously as well to the family of the missing person. That I know our police team are doing everything they can to ensure and locate that elderly gentleman. It's a very difficult time for the community. It's been a very difficult time right across the Central West and right across our state. The devastation that we've seen, it has been a tsunami, a freak event once again that we have seen. I, like Phil and like everybody behind me, have spoken to and today and heard stories of people who went out of their way to save lives, and that wonderful human spirit and instinct that just kicks in to look after each other. That's what we've seen here. To hear so many stories of people who just so humbly talked about what happened, what they did, no care or concern for their own life, just care and concern for others. When these events occur, it can be very difficult, and it can take time for emergency services crews, our great uniformed volunteers, to get here, to do that, to be on the ground. And in the meantime, between that period of time, it's the role of the community that comes together and looks out for each other. And that's exactly what we've seen here once again. I have seen these stories all around the state. It's been a bloody tough 12 months. But in every place, right across our state, every single community, what I see on the ground every single time is our great people coming together to look after each other. And that's exactly what we're seeing here in the Central West. I want to thank our emergency services teams who are, for the work they did, those who carried out all of those rescues, a phenomenal effort in such a short space of time when this flood came through. The response needed to be strong, and it was, and I appreciate our uniformed teams for what they've done. But ultimately, I just want to thank all the members of the community for going past themselves and just looking out for others. It's one of the most amazing and beautiful things about our country and our people. Clearly, there's a long road ahead. There's no way to sugarcoat that. And we've done that every single time that these flood events have occurred. It's taking each day at a time to start the rebuild, obviously focusing on the cleanup today, and that will take some time, but it happens, and I've been certainly saying that to members of the community today. It gets done, and that will take place. We'll get the cleanup done. We'll start the rebuild. We'll get the homes back, and the community will be back stronger than ever. Hearing today as well, importance of getting, and I'll be visiting the preschool. Importance of getting kids back, preschool back, getting as much back on track as quickly as possible will be our focus once again. From Monday, we will have obviously the coming together of all those government services to give the support to every person who needs it. And today, with Senator Sheldon, we can announce from the state and federal level, and this is for all of those disaster-affected areas across the state, we're increasing that primary producer grant from $25,000 to $75,000. So that kicks in today, and that will provide so much support for so many farmers who have lost so much over this period of time. We had farmers who were expecting to have a bumper harvest and have lost it all. We will do everything we can to work with our primary producers to get them back on track. And I just want to say, in terms of the work that needs to be done here, we will have teams on the ground. I want to thank as well Senator Sheldon and the Acting Prime Minister, Richard Marles, for the ADF support. From the last 12 months, what I've seen in terms of government response to these events, the coordination with the ADF and the federal government has been second to none. On Monday, I was immediately on the phone to the Acting Prime Minister, and that approval from the ADF occurred straight away. So I want to thank them, because that's something that we haven't seen in the past. But it's good to see that things are getting better. But I just want to say to the entire community and all the communities right across the Central West who are doing it tough. It can be hard to have hope in terms of the future, but what I have seen everywhere I go across the state is we get through it and we rebuild, and the communities come back, and they come back stronger than ever, and that's exactly what's going to happen here. It's a tough road ahead, but the resilience of the Australian people will always shine through. The New South Wales government will stand side by side with all members who have been affected, all those communities, and that's exactly what we should do. And I just want to end by saying how proud I am to be Premier once again, to come out and see so many people who put their lives on the line to save others. That's the wonderful thing about our country, and it's something that we should truly cherish. Now I'm going to pass to Senator Sheldon.
Good. Thanks very much, Premier and Phil. And I join with everybody behind me, but also I'm sure everybody here, and saying how devastating it has obviously been for a loss of life, and now, of course, 2 people that we're still looking for at the moment. And that's something. It's heart-wrenching for all of us to know that that effect that it has so clearly on communities and those around us, but also a reminder for those that have been dealing with these natural hazards that are becoming a humanitarian disaster in so many places. Right across the state, and work we've been seeing and responses in other parts of the country have been critical in making sure that we do respond respond in a sensible, quick and appropriate way to make sure communities can get that emergency response, but also the capacity for the future to be able to build back in a better way to make sure that our communities have that capacity where these natural disasters, which we're going to see more and more of, don't become humanitarian disasters. And I think this determination between local and the state government and the federal government is to make sure that we build the community even stronger to be able to deal with these sorts of phenomenon that we're seeing now on a more regular basis, these natural hazards. I think one of the things that the Premier really effectively touched on, I think it's something shared, I'm sure, about from all the community, and you know, the services out there, the police services, our hospitals, of course the SES and the ADF, the Defence Forces that have come out and uprooted themselves to make sure that they're here on the front line to support the community. But also importantly, community members that are standing up together and leaning on each other to make sure that we can look after each other, we can get the muck out of the homes, but also rebuild our communities back. One of the things that particularly struck me this morning, and that is that coming in through the town, it's always that thing about politicians flying in and flying out. Well, I got to say, driving in this morning, it was to see the devastation in the local town here, but to see community mucking in together to make sure they can get it back up and back into a state where the community can recommit itself back into these local communities. It's important that we turn around all of us together and learn from our previous experiences, what's happened just so recently in other parts of the state and of course up in Lismore, about what the future might hold for our responses to this particular event. I was over there talking to some of the people from some of the crew from Red Cross, and I just want to real call out to the Red Cross as well. And they they made sure that I would, whatever I did, I made sure that I said to everybody here, and I can see the absolute logic in it, and that is to say register, find and reunite. So register, find and reunite on the Red Cross website. If people are actually living with friends, couch surfing, whether living with family, whether it be locally, whether it be interstate, wherever it might be, make sure you register, because there are services and capacity that the New South Wales government and the national government are in cooperation with to make sure that we can get services to you. But we need to know where you are so you can have those opportunities. We can reach out and make you aware of those opportunities that are available. So if you're in the local community, anywhere here in the Central West, and that really goes for anyone else that's been a subject of this terrible tragedy, these hazards that we've been seeing over these last many months, make sure you do register, make sure that you give an opportunity to get that support we want to give you, but also make sure that you avail yourself that opportunity through the Red Cross. So, it's register, find, reunite, register, find, reunite. I'd really encourage you to make sure you do register. But thank you. I'll now hand you back to Steph.
Sure, sorry, thank you. Well, good morning. It's good to be back here in Eugowra for the second time in 48 hours. I can see progress already. The cleanup had already begun 2 days ago, and it continues to progress today. In addition to the Premier's announcement this morning of $75,000 for rural, for our larger landholders, we're also announcing today grants of up to $10,000 for rural landholders. So these are smaller land holdings, and it will allow those places to those families that have got smaller farms and properties to get on with that initial clean-up and rebuild, whether that be for fencing or for restoring their driveways or other repairs on farm. That money is now available to them as well, available through the Rural Assistance Authority, and I'd encourage people right across New South Wales. We've got 70 local government areas that are currently covered by this natural disaster. It's now in its 65th day. We expect that more local government areas will be added to the list in the coming days and weeks. And I'm really encouraging people right across New South Wales to access that support if they need it. So the recovery efforts are well and truly underway here in Eugowra and indeed across the Cabonne Shire and the Central West more generally. We've moved from that response phase here in Eugowra into recovery. As soon as the roads were accessible, recovery teams have moved in here at the showground. It's a hive of activity. We've got numerous agencies already set up here. We are taking registrations for the Caravans at Home program, and we will look to bring in caravans into this community, put them back, put people back on their home blocks, even if their home is not habitable, in a caravan if they so choose. It's a program that's been incredibly successful in the Northern Rivers region this year. It's yet another program that we trialled and set up there, and we know how successful it's been in places like Woodburn and Coraki, and we're now able to offer it to communities down in this part of the world, and as I said, taking registrations from today. From Monday, we are currently setting up the Recovery Access Centre here at the showground. We're already in the embryonic stages of that, but it will be well and truly set up by Monday. That will have all state and federal agencies and services set up here to help people get back on their feet as quickly as possible, including banking and insurance. So we're really moving as quickly as we possibly can to ensure that the community has access to all of those support services that they need to get back on their journey of recovery. My final message to the community today is please keep the faith. There will be good days and there will be not so good days on this journey, but the New South Wales Government is here. We are standing beside you. We will never give up on your community and what it takes to rebuild it. We will be here with you every day, every step of the way, just as we have in multiple communities right across New South Wales this year. And to those communities that are in flood at present, of which there are scores and scores right across New South Wales, whether it be Tilpa, Condobolin, Moama, Forbes, Gemelong, Yarrabalong, the list goes on and on. We too will be there for you as that emergency passes, but we will be there to continue resupplying your communities for as long as it takes. We know that we've got weeks and months ahead of us in this space, but as those floodwaters recede, we too will move in and ensure that that recovery commences as quickly as possible and we get communities back on their feet as quickly as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Steph. And it should be worth noting that, like Lismore, this is not just a flood, this is a natural disaster, what has happened to Eugowra. I'm no stranger to Eugowra, I've been here many a times, often with the local MP, and it's a very close-knit community, and to hear some of the stories today, they are really moving. What we have seen in following the actions we took on the Northern Rivers post the flooding and the massive natural disaster events in February and March this year, Transport for New South Wales has arranged $15 million to be advanced as cash to the Central West and Western New South Wales councils from today. I'm pleased to say that those funds were deposited into Cabonne Shire and Lachlan Shire's account last night, with the remaining 6 councils to have their funds deposited into their accounts by close of business today. This is about removing the red tape. It's about making sure that our local government areas and our councils have the cash they need today so that they can deploy more crews, they can pay overtime, they can hire more equipment. They just need to do whatever they need to do to reconnect communities like here in Cabonne to ensure that those roads get opened and that they don't have to worry about filling out a form to get that cash so they can be deployed and get cracking with it now. So $15 million being deployed, advanced as cash from Transport for New South Wales, who will manage the reimbursement at a later stage with Resilience New South Wales and the Commonwealth. It's about making sure our councils don't have to worry about that paperwork and they can be deployed as quickly as possible. Today we have 21 closures on our state roads and highways across New South Wales, with 4 other disruptions. That is about half of where we were only 2 or 3 days ago. Our Transport for New South Wales senior officials are on the ground in Eugowra today, working with council, working with contractors to ensure that we are there to support local government right across regional New South Wales. And sometimes it's not all just about money. It can be about geotechnical advice, it can be engineers, it can be bridge inspectors. Our door is open. We are happy to help and work hand in hand with local government because your roads intersect with our state highways, with our state roads, and we need to make sure that we keep our roads connected, that we have harvest, that we have obviously the Christmas and summer holidays approaching. We need to make sure that the potholes are filled, the roads are safe. If families can get from A to B. We've had unprecedented rain in 2022, the wettest I've ever seen on record. People may challenge that who are older than I am, but unprecedented. But what is important is that we will get through a wet summer. We will get through these natural disasters by working together, whether it's local government, state government, the Commonwealth, the community. Roads are an important piece of infrastructure for regional communities. It is what connects A to B. It is what connects Eugowra here to Forbes. It is what connects Eugowra through to Kudal. We are here as the state government, as Transport for New South Wales, to do whatever we need to do in the coming months to make sure that our road network remains open and that our critical supply chain across this state remains strong into the months ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to say my thanks to our SES volunteers, staff and our partner agencies for what they have been doing across most of the state in these terrible flood events. So the SES obviously coordinated the rescue operation here in town, which was, left devastating effects across this community. We're now helping with the clean-up and handing over to recovery. So we've been helped by many of our partner agencies, being Rural Fire Service, New South Wales Fire and Rescue, Ambulance, VRA, Surf Lifesaving, Marine Rescue, out there helping these communities. At the moment we've got levels of flood in all catchment areas west of the Great Dividing Range, so there's extensive support going out there. And recently we've had the privilege of having the Singapore rescue operators come into Australia. We've also had the New Zealand incident management teams, and we're talking about what other resources, because SES are here for the long term to help these communities and make sure that they are safe. We can prepare those communities for what is still flowing down the river systems and help in that quick clean-up that we can do across the state. So I thank all those volunteers and all those emergency service personnel for what you've done. As stated today, there have been some heroic efforts across this town to save people. At one stage we had 14 helicopters in the air helping those residents get to safety. It's been a fantastic effort, and I hope this community, as assisted by the government, can get back on its feet very quickly. I've heard many stories from the residents how serious and at risk and in danger they were when this storm of water came through. So thank you to my volunteers, and thanks to the emergency service agencies for being there for these communities. Thanks, Brian.
Questions?
You said Eugowra will rebuild. One, is that a promise? And two, entire houses have been washed away. People don't have insurance. And the community says they need your help to rebuild. So what is the government?
Well, it is a commitment we're going to rebuild. There's always a period of shock and pain and suffering that occurs when these freak events happen, but ultimately, day by day by day, we rebuild communities. That's been the story of this state for the last 4 years, from bushfires to flood after flood after flood. And take Lismore for example. People said when that event happened, people said Lismore would close. I've seen Lismore just recently, and the shops are opening. The homes are coming back. It takes time, but it happens, and that's exactly what will occur in Eugowra. That's exactly what will occur in other areas of the Central West that have gone through this period of time. On insurance, look, we'll work through that, and I'll speak to the Insurance Council about those issues, because for a lot of people have lost everything, and we'll be with them every step of the way. We will. That's what we've done in the past. That's what we'll do here again, and we'll work through those issues. Some of those, and you've got to be honest about it, right? Some of those things can't get resolved overnight. They just can't. What we've got to do is connect people with services, get people into homes, temporary accommodation, and then make sure that moves into permanent accommodation to having someone getting their home back. That's what we'll do.
Premier, is it responsible to rebuild this community on a floodplain? Like, we're in the middle of climate change. We're seeing these natural disasters come time and time
Yeah.
again. How can you promise that this won't happen to this
People have to live somewhere. People have to live somewhere. I mean, almost the entire state right now is subject to a flood. Subject to a flood. There are any area across New South. It's not certain areas say, well, that's an area that can flood. This was a freak event that happened very, very quickly, and so many heroes in the community came out to save lives. But people have to live somewhere. And there are so many. How many disaster areas was Steph across the state declared area disaster?
70 and rising.
Over 70 areas across New South Wales are declared disasters at the moment. And that's why we say everyone needs to be ready, particularly as we go into summer, because we do expect further severe weather. The rivers are full, the dams are full, the catchments are full, the ground is wet. And so that's why what we saw here in Eugowra just happened so quickly, because when you have that rainfall overnight, you can get such devastation. And that's the situation we find ourselves in our state right now. And that's why I always say to people, please follow the instructions of the SES. But you have a situation like this. People don't have time to follow the instructions of the SES. They just have to get out there and look after others. And that's exactly what happened here. And that's the story that should be told, because this is the story of our great people that I've seen for the last 3 years.
Premier, is there enough financial assistance on offer for the residents just in the streets behind us? You've announced the rural grants and the farmers grants, but what about people that are just here? Do they have access to enough immediate financial assistance?
Yeah, so through the Commonwealth and state, we currently have 4 levels of financial support available. Today, I'll be for small businesses, the $50,000 small business grant. I'll be writing to the Acting Prime Minister in relation to having those funds available. But there are already individual payments that are accessible through Service New South Wales and obviously through the Rural Assistance Authority as well. So those funds are there, but it's a long, the council support to get the infrastructure built, to get the clean-up done. But look at the roads as well. Like, we can't just build back the same way. We've got to build back stronger and more resilient, because you look at the roads right across the state, but particularly coming into Eugowra, I mean, they've been washed away. So we've got to rebuild it in a strong way. And as I said, it's not going to happen overnight, but it's going to happen because we've been doing this every day for the last 4 years, right? And I just want to say to the community, thank you for what you've done, and ultimately we'll be with you, Commonwealth, state, local council, and we'll rebuild in a strong way. I don't want people to leave the towns they love. People have lived here for their entire lives. I can see today how close-knit this community is. I can see the spirit in this community, and it's going to come back, and we are going to rebuild. I don't want people to leave town because there wasn't that support available.
So how is it then, if you have lost your home here, that's going to cost you 150 grand even to get a demountable or something? Like, can you do the sums and explain how the money that you're going to give them is going to make them be left with anything?
Well, we're going to work through that. They were the same questions we had in Lismore. And we got people back into homes in Lismore. The same issues. And what we should be saying is that we're going to get through it, because we've got through it every natural disaster after every natural disaster. But this event occurred at the start of this week. You take time to work through and make sure that the support that we provide looks after every person, and every person in this community will have a different need and need different support. And so, we have those categories of funding available for people to get that financial assistance, but then ultimately also look at people's individual circumstances to provide that help, that care and support. Now, my focus right now is to get the clean-up done, and you got to look at these things in a staged way. We got to get the clean-up done. We got to get people into temporary accommodation. That's a significant focus of mine. And then we'll get permanent. Then we'll look at the permanency. But my commitment to Eugowra is we're going to rebuild in a very strong way. No one's going anywhere. They're coming home.
So, Tommy, what do you make of Federal Minister Murray Watt's comments today that homes shouldn't be built in high-risk areas? Do you agree?
Yeah, I'm leading that work. I'm leading that work at the National Cabinet. I've been tasked by the Prime Minister to do that. That came out of the flood inquiry that Mary O'Kane and Mick Fuller put together, and it's the 100%. Murray Watt is 100% correct.
So
but the entire state.
Need to live somewhere?
Well, because the entire state is flood prone. There are areas that are more high risk than others. What I will be presenting to the National Cabinet is in certain areas which reach a certain threshold, we won't have development on. And one of the key aspects of the flood inquiry was that those floodplains should be used as community assets. So what you do is you use the floodplain, but you use it in a way that when the major flood happens, that you're not causing loss of life and property damage.
What does the community have to go through if this doesn't meet the threshold for changing those plans?
this is a freak. No, this was a freak event. You'd be closing down the entire state. This was a freak event, right? Yes, but nothing like what we've just seen. Nothing like what we've just seen. And we need to rebuild. We need to rebuild in community towns. In Lismore, let's take Lismore for example. We're rebuilding. We just announced with the Commonwealth Government a buyback scheme for homes. So Lismore continues. I committed to the people of Lismore on day one that Lismore had a strong future, but we had to have that future in a way that worked for the local community, that protected lives and protected property. That's what we're putting together. We're moving areas of the community through a buyback scheme in which homes are rebuilt in safer areas. We're retrofitting homes, and we're also raising homes, and we're working with the community in relation to that. So we'll look at all of those issues. But it's not about blanket bans. It's about looking at those areas where there's a major risk on significant floodplain, and saying, well, hold on, no, we're going to stop development.
What about mental health support? We haven't heard much about that. These farmers have gone through so much drought, now floods for some in this area years. We know that some are on the brink of suicide as a result of this. So what can we do to help? Because we haven't heard much in that space.
Oh, we'll do a lot more. I mean, we did that up in the Northern Rivers. We put a whole lot of teams in for mental health. Mental health isn't something for the short term. It's a major, mental health support needs to be there for the long term. There are, as you say, quite rightly, like particularly, take the farmers. They've gone through drought and many have just lost their crops. It's been a bloody painful time for them. And it's important that people reach out for that mental health support and care. I think we've come a long way as a society that it's not seen to be today. Asking for support for your mental health is not seen to be a negative thing. I think it's seen to be a positive thing. And from a state government service provider, we will be coming in and making sure and partnering also with other organisations and making sure that support is there. We did that in the Northern Rivers. It's still there, and I can tell you from even my last visit there, meeting with people, it is still very raw, and people are still doing it incredibly tough. And that support doesn't need to just be coming into town overnight. That support needs to be there for a long time.
Just back on that risk threshold question.
Yeah.
Do you think your definition of high risk is the same as the federal government?
I don't think this is a federal government versus state government issue. I mean, the Prime Minister has raised with me at the last National Cabinet, given the work that we did through the Mick Fuller O'Kane inquiry, to lead a body of work to present to National Cabinet in relation to future development in areas which are high risk. Now I will put together what I think is an appropriate approach, but it's not for me to make the final decision. I think it's for me to share with the other leaders across the country and say, here's my view. What do you think? And if we can get a national consistent approach, that's a great thing. And that's been one of the great things of the National Cabinet, has been people are putting party politics to one side, particularly on issues like this, and saying, let's make things better going forward. And if we can learn and share information from each other, we should. So I'll take that work to the National Cabinet.
And on the flood inquiry,
yeah.
Warning systems were a big thing that came out of that.
Yeah.
This was identified as an issue here, was that there was not enough warning based on the gauges that are available.
Yeah.
So what's the government doing to
Well, I mean, so we'll have the final response to the flood inquiry shortly. We've obviously have an interim response where we've accepted all the recommendations in relation to the flood inquiry, and that was obviously one of them. And we will get that done. That was something that needed to occur. We've already been starting to implement a range of those recommendations. Some, as I said, we can get done quickly. Others will take time. Others will actually be very much focused on the long term. But that's probably a mid-term one that needs to be delivered, and that's what we'll do.
Premier, can I ask you quickly on rail strikes?
Yeah.
Will the government commit to fare free train travel next Monday and Wednesday to prevent industrial action? And also, do you have a response to the Firefighters Union, which says that the new distances on the Sydney Metro tunnels are unsafe?
I'll deal with the first one. Do you want to deal with the second one? So I had a very constructive meeting with Alex Classens in the RTBU yesterday. I want this situation fixed. I've made that very clear. I've had a subsequent conversation with him this morning, and we'll offer fare-free travel on Sydney trains for the entire week next week. From Monday to Friday, travel will be free on the network. We're going into mediation on Tuesday, and I want those matters resolved. I've sat down with both the Industrial Relations Minister and the Transport Minister. In that meeting, I'm in regular discussions with them. This has gone on for way too long. Providing free travel for the week will ensure that industrial action does not occur. As I've said, if there is any industrial action on the network, we are not modifying the NIF. But following the constructive discussions that we had yesterday, I'm hoping that there's a resolution, and I want there to be a resolution within a week, and let's get it done.
Just back on the floods, one last one. Will there be an inquiry into what happened here, like there was in Lismore? Are there lessons to learn from this?
I think there are always lessons to learn. I mean, to the earlier question on warnings, they came through the flood inquiry. I think that's something we can do, but we also kind of have to appreciate, right, that when these freak events happen so quickly, it's always going to be difficult and a challenge. What happened to get 14 aircraft? And I was obviously on the phone on Monday with the acting Prime Minister, with the Emergency Services Minister, who was working alongside the Commissioner to make sure that we had aircrafts in the sky to conduct those rescues. We had 14 aircraft in the skies rescuing people. I go back to Lismore, and the challenge we had there, that didn't happen. I think we've learned a lot already. But with every event, they're all different, and we'll reflect on it. But my focus right now is not about doing a review into it. My focus right now is getting every single person back on their feet, finishing the cleanup, getting people into temporary accommodation, and rebuilding this town. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Thanks very much. Last one.
Sorry, just thinking long game. Do we need to reassess land use planning laws in this state to get homes on floodplains or prevent them from being built on floodplains?
Well, as I said earlier, that I will present that work to the National Cabinet in respect of development on floodplains going forward. But my view is, at the moment, we're in a state that everywhere you go, you are at risk of being flooded. That is the reality. Whether that's in metropolitan Sydney or regional New South Wales, from Balmain to Broken Hill, you are at risk of floods. That is the situation that our state finds ourselves in with all the heavy rainfall we've had over this period of time. But going forward, we can't make the mistake. We can't change the sins of the past. What we can do is make improvements going forward and not make those mistakes again. And I'm very much focused on that. And I will respond, obviously, alongside the Planning Minister in relation to future development. But that will be in those areas that are high risk, and I'll present that work to the National Cabinet. Thanks very much.